First Year, Part 14, the 29th. A.M. Ashwin. Right after breakfast the next morning, I went to the owlery to send a letter with the necklace for Frank inside. In my letter to Frank, I told him how to use the necklace to contact me. I also told him I had given 2 other necklaces to my friends, so when he wanted to contact me he would need to press the red jewel, and none of the others. I didn't think Aileen or Shem would appreciate Frank contacting them. The owlery was located in the West Tower. It was the first time since arriving at Hogwarts that I had been to the owlery, having had no reason to send a letter to anyone before. The owlery was a circular stone room, with no windows or glass. It was freezing and drafty and my teeth chattered as I made my way across the room to the school owls who sat nestled on their perches that rose right up to the top of the tower. Once I had sent Frank the letter, I made my way to the giant statue that led to the secret passageway. As I touched the statue's fingertips to reveal the entrance, I remembered the night I had discovered this secret passageway. I had seen the fingers glow red. And then again, once in the secret passageway, I had seen the bricks that led to the secret room glow red. Both no longer glowed red, but I still pondered over what it had meant. Why had my left eye seen the 2 hidden entrances glow, but not my right? Not for the first time, I wished I had someone to talk to about my eye. But it was my secret and would remain that way as long as I had any say in the matter. The whole way to the secret room where Shem was, I pondered over my eye. I knew my left eye was magical, that was nothing new. Ever since I had gotten the damaged eye, I had known there was something different about it. It was red, for one thing. It was cold and saw only in black and white. It could see in the dark like an animal or something, and it saw misty color clouds around new people. Now it could see secret entrances glowing, apparently. For a long time after my left eye changed, I had not known what it meant when I saw colors out of my left eye upon meeting a new person. It still gave me a slight shock every time I saw a burst of color surrounding someone through that eye, it being accustomed to seeing only in black and white. Shortly after moving into Aunt Cora's house, I had discovered a book that mentioned auras in the library. It didn't cover much, but it told me the basics of what each color meant. That was the first time I had realized I could see a person's aura upon our first meeting. That's what the strange color clouds that surrounded a person were. Auras. But what could seeing the entrances to both secret passageways glowing possibly mean? It had nothing to do with auras. I resolved to go to the library and read every book I could get my hands on about magical eyes as soon as this whole Shem situation was over. I needed to understand what my eye was and why it did the things it did. When I reached the secret room, I saw that Shem and Aileen were both already playing a game of wizard's chess. They were both so concentrated on it that they didn't even hear me enter. I watched the 2 play as I snacked on some food I had brought. After the first few moments of watching them play, I became bored and turned my mind to other things. Like what we planned to do on the 29th. The days leading up to the 29th were spent going over the plan again and again until we all had it memorized. We all knew what we were each supposed to do, and how we were supposed to do it. Before we knew it, Wednesday night had come, and it was time to go. Aileen, Shem, and I had waited until well past curfew before we all snuck out. It wasn't as hard sneaking out of Hogwarts as it had been sneaking in. We made our way out onto Hogwarts' snow-covered grounds and down to Hagrid's hut. Hagrid waited on his front doorstep, a lantern held in one hand to help us see. It wasn't needed though, what with the bright snow that covered the ground. Hagrid and Shem exchanged greetings upon meeting each other for the first time, and then Hagrid dug around in his coat, pulling out a brown bottle with a corkscrew. Popping off the lid, he poured a thick, brown liquid onto his palm. "What's that?" I asked, placing my hands over my nose to cover up the foul-smelling stuff coming from the bottle. "This air is the stuff I was telling Yerub. You need to coat yourselves with it to disguise your sense." Aileen covered her mouth and gagged. "What is in that bottle? Dead fish guts?" "You don't want to know," Hagrid said as he rubbed the brown liquid onto his hair, hands, and face. Hagrid handed the bottle down to me. I took it and slowly poured some into my hands, began to rub it into my hair and skin as Hagrid had. I felt like throwing up. I was glad I hadn't had much to eat at dinner time. I handed the bottle to Aileen, who hesitantly took it and began to rub it on herself as well. "You don't need any," Hagrid said to Shem when Shem took the bottle and was about to pour some into his hands. "They can smell you, since you'll be in the open. It's us that'll be hiding." "Okay, wonderful," Shem said, a sigh of relief escaping his lips. He handed the bottle back to Hagrid, who placed the bottle back in his coat. Hagrid then dug around in his coat and pulled out a handful of items that looked like sticks. He handed us each two and placed the rest back in his coat. "Remember," Hagrid said. "If something wrong, light these and it'll alert the professors." I nodded and placed the sticks in my coat pocket. If the stick was lit, it would set off bright sparks in the sky and make a loud whistling sound. Hagrid had told the professors that he was going out into the Forbidden Forest tonight to take care of something, but that he might run into trouble. He had said if he needed any help from them, he would set off the stick things to alert them, but that everything would probably be fine. Professor McGonagall had looked at Hagrid the whole time he'd been talking, and it had looked like Hagrid was about to cave in and tell her everything when he started stuttering under her steady gaze. Aileen had stepped in just in time and said she needed Hagrid to help her with something outside. Aileen hadn't wanted Hagrid to say anything at all to the professors, but Hagrid had insisted on being as safe about this as possible. He was still convinced it was a bad idea and we should tell the professors. But, not wanting us to be expelled, he wouldn't tell them. "Whatever you do," Aileen said as she pocketed the two sticks, "don't set them off unless there is absolutely no other choice. We'll all be in major trouble if the professors have to come help. Alexa and I will be expelled for sure." We all nodded in agreement at this. "To light them," I reminded Shem, "all you need to do is bite the tip." "Right," Aileen said. "Everyone remembers the plan?" Everyone nodded their heads. "Then let's go." Unlike last time, we didn't cover our footsteps in the snow once we entered the Forbidden Forest. If the professors did need to come help us, we wanted them to be able to find us. Shem led the way as he was the only one who remembered exactly where the underground forest was. I thought I could find it if I needed to, but I might end up getting lost if I tried by myself. As we got deeper into the forest, I could see the trees began changing from pine trees to the other kind of trees. The large, creepy-looking kind of trees. Though we stuck close together, I still felt myself jump in fright every time I heard a sound somewhere off in the distance. At one point, we saw something scamper away in the woods ahead of us. It was too dark for the others to see what it was, but my left eye caught it. It had only 3 legs, and it looked like a mix between a rabbit and a dog. I had no idea what it was, but I knew if Aileen had seen it she would have. When I spotted a particularly large tree, I knew we were here. "This is it," I whispered to Hagrid as we reached the tree and looked down. "The underground forest we told you about." In the dark of the night, they couldn't see anything but roots where there should have been a cliff. I saw the cliff through my left eye just as it had been in the daytime. "I don't see nothing," Hagrid said, peering down. "Trust me," I said, "this is it. We just need to climb down these roots and then we'll be in the underground forest." "If Yer says so," Hagrid said. He grasping onto one of the large tree roots and climbed down. Aileen and I levitated Shem down before we too followed. The cliff was deeper than I remembered, and it took a while to reach the bottom. Aileen nearly slipped and fell as soon as she started climbing down, and we had to go slower the rest of the way down. When we reached the bottom, Hagrid and Shem waited for us. "To think," Hagrid said, looking around us. "I've been in this forest 100 times and I never came across this place." "Well," Aileen said, dusting off the snow that had fallen in her hair. "If it makes you feel better, it was only by accident that we stumbled upon it. Literally." "The centaurs are not far from here," Shem said. "This way." We followed Shem through the forest until we reached a clearing with mounds of hay spread all over the place. "We are here," Shem whispered. I could hear a tremble in his voice as he spoke. "Where are all the centaurs?" I asked. "Scattered," Shem whispered. "I know where my uncle is, though." "Are you sure you want to do this?" Hagrid asked. "It's not a matter of what I want," Shem said. "There's no other choice. It's either me or my father. Come with me, Hagrid. I'll show you where my father and my uncle are. Once Uncle Kajam and I leave, you must get father to follow. Wait, I said as Shem turned to go. He turned around, and I flung my arms around him. He stiffened, keeping his arms at his side, and then awkwardly patted my back. I could feel him shaking as I hugged him, and I knew he must be terrified. He was going into the hands of something that wanted him dead. Stay safe, I said. I felt him nod his head, and I let go. He squared his shoulders and walked into the clearing. I felt a strong urge to stop him, to go back, to forget about this whole plan, but I stayed where I was. Rai, Hagrid said, more to himself than to anyone else as he followed Shem. Shem gets his uncle, I get Shem's dad, your girls wait here. Then your girls follow. The rest of his whispered words were carried away by the wind as the two got farther into the clearing. We had decided that it would be best for Hagrid to convince Shem's dad to come since he had spoken to the Centaur's leader before, and Shem's dad knew who Hagrid was. Aileen and I stayed behind the tree and watched as Shem and Hagrid made their way to a large cluster of trees on the far end of the clearing. Just as I was about to tell Aileen it had been too long, that something had gone terribly wrong, I saw two dark shapes emerge from the cluster of trees. That's them, I whispered to Aileen, pointing at the shapes. I don't see anyone, Aileen whispered back, squinting in the darkness. Trust me, I said, I've got great night vision. They're coming this way. And they were. My left eye could see the two clear as day. Shem walked beside a taller centaur with a long mane of black hair. The other centaur, Kajam, looked nothing like how he had when I had first seen him. His skin wasn't grey, his teeth weren't pointed, and his eyes definitely weren't red. He looked beautiful. Kajam was the most beautiful creature I had ever seen in my life. I remembered what Shem had said about vampirines' appearances. How they were only ever ugly if they wanted to be or if they felt an overpowering emotion. I also noticed something else. The cloud that surrounded Shem's ankle was chopped off and jagged looking. Kajam's cloud was even more jagged looking than any of the other cut-off clouds I'd seen. Out of all the people I'd ever seen, only 3 others had this strange chopped-off shape to their cloud. Remus Lupin, Shem, and Hagrid. What did it mean? Kajam's cloud was a mix of black and grey, strength, power, sadness, little emotion, and evil. Even if I hadn't already known Kajam was evil, the cloud around him would have told me. I couldn't think of anything in common with the 4 people's clouds that were chopped off. They weren't the same colors. Kajam's was black and grey, Shem's was red and green, Remus Lupin's had been blue, and Hagrid's cloud had been a dark pink color. A mix of red and pink. I had been surprised at the pink in the huge man's cloud when I first met Hagrid, but after getting to know him a little, I understood why Hagrid's cloud was dark pink. Dark pink meant love, caring, warm-hearted, anger, and passion. Hagrid was a warm-hearted, kind, and loving man, despite what people thought about him due to his size. That was something Hagrid and I shared in common. People always judged us on our outside appearances. Hagrid also had a bit of righteous anger though when it came bullies or if someone said something bad about someone or something he cared about. He cared greatly for magical creatures and was surprisingly gentle with them. I glanced at Aileen and noticed she was clutching her wand in one hand and the sticks Hagrid had given us in the other. Grabbing hold of my necklace, I pressed the green jewel in the corner. Don't set those off, I thought to Aileen. I'm not, I heard her voice whisper back in my head. She glancing down at her hand in surprise as if she hadn't realized she'd had the sticks in her hand. I'm just being prepared. I watched as Shem and Kajam came closer to where we hid behind the tree. For a moment, I thought they were heading directly towards us, but then I saw them go to the left of where we stood. I didn't dare make a sound as the 2 dark shapes I knew to be Shem and his uncle passed by us, not 10 feet away. I could hear their hushed voices and then a harsh laugh from Kajam. The sound didn't fit with this beautiful creature. I couldn't make out the words they were saying as the wind carried them away. My hands shook as I watched them. I slowly reached into my pocket and drew out my wand. I felt a little safer just having it in my hand even though I knew I couldn't do anything with it. I pressed the blue stone and sent my thought to Shem. Are you all right? Is everything going as planned? I got my answer immediately. I'm fine. Everything is going as planned, so far. Be careful. Aileen and I kept our eyes glued to the two centaurs. Even though all Aileen could see was two dark shapes moving through the forest, I could make them out clear as day. Once they had walked far enough away from us that they wouldn't hear us following, we crept forward, being as quiet as possible. Every time Aileen or I crunched the leaves on the ground or snapped a twig, I could feel my breathing stop and my heart stop, waiting to see if Sham's uncle had stopped up ahead. The wind that rustled the leaves must have concealed any sounds we made though, because Sham's uncle didn't glance back once. Aileen and I followed them, being careful to stay hidden behind the large trees. If we were caught, everything would be ruined. Every 5 feet, Aileen or I would tie a cut piece of red ribbon around a tree, while the other kept their eyes on the two up ahead. It had been Sham's idea to do this. We didn't know where Kajam planned on taking Sham, so the only way Hagrid would know where to bring Sham's father was if he had a trail leading to Kajam and Sham. We tied the ribbon in 2 knots to make sure it wouldn't blow away. After a while of walking through the forest, Kajam and Sham stopped up ahead of us. Kajam shoved Sham to the ground and said something to him before leaving. Aileen and I glanced at each other. Where was his uncle going? As if Sham had heard my thoughts, he reached for his necklace and pressed both the red and green jewels in the corner. He's going to get the stuff for the ritual. He'll be back in a minute, I heard his voice say in my head. Aileen and I dashed as quietly as we could close to where Sham sat, knowing this was the best opportunity to get close without Kajam seeing us. Is he using his powers on you? I asked Sham through the necklace. Aileen and I had also pressed both jewels on our necklace, so we were in a 3-way conversation. The 2 jewels that had been pressed remained down unless you pressed them again to break off contact. No, he thinks the reason I came back was that his vampiren powers attracted me. Just like we planned. Good, Aileen, I heard Aileen's voice say in my head. Let's hope it stays that way. We don't need you giving us away in an attempt to please that monster. Just then, I saw Sham's uncle step through a nearby patch of trees. In one hand, he held a blade shaped like a C. In the other, he held a small satchel. I could see Sham pale when he caught sight of the blade. Aileen grabbed onto my arm. She, too, saw what Kajam held in his hand. We were close enough to them now that you didn't need night vision to see them. It'll be all over soon, Kajam said. I could make out his words clear now that we were this close. Why are you doing this? Sham asked. Sham, Aileen's voice whispered in my head, even though there was no need to whisper her thoughts. Don't question him. He'll know you're not under his power. Why do you think? Kajam spat. All my life I've been treated like a monster. All my life, I've had to bow down to those weaker than myself. No more. I will take what's rightfully mine. Kajam drew a round necklace from his bag and placed it around Sham's neck, while at the same time ripping off Sham's triangle necklace and throwing it to the ground. As soon as the necklace touched Sham's skin, the necklace glowed faintly and Sham lurched back in pain. From his satchel, Kajam pulled out a handful 3 candles and began to light them. The fire from the candles flickered but didn't go out. How is the wind not putting out those candles? I heard Aileen ask. I shook my head and shrugged. They must be magical, I thought back. Look at the flames, the tips are blood red. Kajam took another necklace from his satchel and placed it around his own neck. He winced slightly in pain but continued. He then took a small sack of something out and sprinkled it in a circle around Sham. Kajam reached into the satchel and withdrew a large black book. He flipped through the pages. Aileen, I thought. Where is Hagrid and Sham's father? What if he couldn't find us? Shouldn't they have been here by now? Don't worry, Aileen said, for all we know, they are hidden in the trees watching this unfold just like we are. What if they're not though? Don't you think Sham's father would have done something by now? It looks like Kajam's about to start the ritual. Aileen didn't respond. Kajam stepped closer to Sham and motioned for him to hold out his hand. Sham did so, if somewhat slowly. With the C-shaped blade, Kajam slit into Sham's palm. Sham let out a small whimper of pain but otherwise held still. He couldn't let Kajam see how much he didn't want to do this. Squeezing Sham's hand, Kajam let a few drops of blood fall onto both the pendants they wore. He then released Sham's palm and with the same blade cut into his own palm, repeating the action. I could Sham's jaw clenched tightly, and tears of pain trying to escape his eyes. I wanted nothing more than to rush over and stop this somehow. But if I did that, everything would be ruined, if it wasn't already. Alien, I thought desperately. We need to do something. Wait, was all Alien said. How was she so calm? Wait? I asked in disbelief. Alien, if I didn't finish though. A moment too late, I realized I hadn't been thinking those last words. My voice had raised in my panic and I had spoken them aloud. Oh no. Who's there? Kajum snarled, looking around in the trees. I stilled, barely daring to breathe. Kajum stepped forward, sniffing the air trying to catch a scent. Uncle, Sham said, glancing around. There's no one here but us. Please, finish the ritual. I want nothing more than to help you become the leader by sacrificing myself. Kajum gave Shem a look of pure disgust. Shut up, boy. Kajum glanced around again. Who's there? He repeated, angry this time. Come out, and I won't kill you. I looked at Alien in terror. He was coming closer. Alien just held a finger to her lips and mouthed the words stay still. Show yourselves, Kajum said. Uncle Kajum, Shem said, a small note of panic in his voice. His uncle ignored him though and walked directly toward us. This was it. The plan hadn't gone as planned, and it was time for Plan B. I reached into my pocket and pulled the stick out, placing it in my mouth, ready to bite it hard. Maybe the loud whistling noise the stick would make and the sparks it would blast in the sky would scare Kajum enough to run away. Just as I started to bite down on the stick though, I felt Alien tug hard on my arm, making me drop the stick. Don't, I heard Alien say in my head. I was about to ask her why not, what else we could possibly do when I heard another voice speak. Kajum? Out of the dark woods and into the clearing stepped another centaur. This centaur looked like an older version of Shem, with the same pointy ears and dark brown eyes. Hagrid stood behind him, an angry expression on his face. His gaze flickered between Shem and Kajum. Kajum's attention was distracted as he turned around, and I felt my breath rush out in a loud whoosh. If it hadn't been for the wind, I knew Kajum would have heard. As it was though, Kajum was focused on the newcomers. Brother? Kajum sounded surprised. What brings you to this part of the forest on such a cold night? You should be resting. Author's note. I can't wait until this book is finished and I can go back and rewrite it. There are so many things that I've learned about writing since starting, and I can't wait to implement them when I rewrite this. Especially foreshadowing. Did any of you guys watch the new Harry Potter fan film that just came out? Voldemort, Origins of the Heir. If you didn't, you should really check it out. If you did, what did you guys think of it?